Chapter 11. Shampoo. Michael walked over to the kitchen house, with most of the maids cooking something over the fire. They immediately greeted him with smiles once they saw him walk into the room. "Young master, we made your favorite beef stew. Would you like to eat it now, young master?" "Young master." Beretta walked over to Michael and noticed that he had the same mischievous grin on his face when he showed them the faucet. It was even more suspicious now since he had his hands on his back. Obvious that he was hiding something. He. I just wanted a little bit of feedback about my new project." The moment he said those words, the maids immediately stopped what they were doing and offered themselves to the young master. "Oh, what is it, young master? Did it have something to do with what you bought last time?" He nodded and finally showed them the bar of white soap behind his back. And immediately, they smelled a pleasant smell reminiscent of flowers wafting from the strange bar in his hands. "This is called hand soap. It is used to clean your hands, body, and everything else." Michael walked over to the faucet and let the water run over his hands. Then he rubbed the soap, and immediately a thick lather bubbled up, covering his entire hand. They knew what a soap was, but the one in the young master's hands was completely different. It smelled better than perfume, and was also a lot bubblier than even the most expensive soap in the market. Michael washed the lather off his hands and showed it to the maids. "See." One of the maids got too curious and took Michael's hands and smelled it herself. And once she did, she immediately fell in love with the lingering scent on his hands. "Oh my God! Young master, this is even better than cologne. How does it smell so good even after you washed it off?" The rest of the maids wanted a smell too, but Michael stopped them. "If you want, you could try it for yourself," he said, giving them the bar of soap. They immediately fought against each other to be the first ones to use the soap. But eventually all of them got a chance to use the soap. "This cleans my hands so fast," said one of the maids. She would have needed at least 10 minutes to scrub the coal off her hands through normal means. But with the soap, it only took her less than a minute to get rid of everything. Not only that, but her hands smelled great after it too. Seeing the maids immediately loving the soap, Michael felt satisfied. With soap and water, there was finally a standard of cleanliness in this household. "To thank you for all your service, I prepared these for all of you," Michael said as he walked outside and brought out a big rucksack. He then gave everyone their own bar of soap and a vial of a strange blue liquid. As expected, the maids screamed in excitement once they received this very generous gift. They were almost so excited with the bar of soap that they almost ignored the strange liquid included with it. "Young master, what is this?" said one of the maids, putting the vial over her eyes. "That one's called a shampoo. Just try to put that shampoo on your hair during your shower, and you'll see the effects." One of the maids took out the cork from the vial and smelled the shampoo liquid. The scent was as, if not better, than the soap because the essential oils were much more concentrated in it. The maids all looked at each other, with their eyes filled with a competitive fire. Then silence. After a few seconds, one of them finally had enough and shouted, "I'll take a bath first." After that, the maids all rushed to say the same. "Me too. I said it first." "You've taken a shower this morning." "No, I haven't." "You're the one who uses the shower every day." After a lot of arguing amongst the maids, a good half of them immediately returned to their dorms to try out this new soap and shampoo that the young master gave them. Meanwhile, the rest of the unfortunate maids were forced to continue the work in the kitchen house. After a while, the maids returned from the dormitory, all smelling like they had just been frolicking in a field of flowers. Not only that, their skin seemed to be glistening under the light, as if all the dirt and imperfections had been scrubbed off. Even they couldn't help but touch themselves with how smooth their skin became after using the soap to clean their body. But perhaps the most startling difference was their hair. It became voluptuous and silky, as if they had been coated in honey. Their hair looked healthier as well, with barely any knots or straight ends. The other maids would have praised the soap, but they immediately went back to the dormitory to try it out themselves. Meanwhile, the refreshed maids all turned to Michael and praised him again for his generous gift. "Young master, if you give these to any lady, Then I'm sure they'll marry you in an instant. Yes, he'll be quite popular with the ladies with this. Michael wasn't thinking about girls and romance for now. His mind was far older than his body because of his previous life. Right now, he was focused on increasing the standard of living in this place, starting with the mansion. Now that he was done with water and proper sanitation, his next course of business was a little bit more complicated. This world still measured time through sundials, hourglasses, and candles. For his next project, Michael wanted to create the first mechanical clock. Since it was purely made out of gears and metal workings, it was completely doable with his current abilities. Of course, he still needed to practice his 2-star metal bend spell to achieve the kind of precision needed for this kind of project. Metal bend. Fire and earth element. This magic allows the user to bend and manipulate metals telepathically. The strength of the spell depends on the material used and the mastery of the spell. Chapter 12. Clamoring for soap. The next day, one of the maids went over to the town closest to the Vanderbilt estate, Kingsbridge. This was a sophisticated place made for those living above normal means. This was where royals, businessmen, and other such wealthy individuals stayed and lived their lives. The maid named Costella walked over to an establishment that rich women frequently visited. This was a place where wives, their daughters, and their maids frequented to have tea and share some juicy gossip. Since Costella was a maid of the Vanderbilt estate, she had access to these high-class establishments. Do you like it? My husband bought it from me overseas. It's made from the pearl of the Orient, said one of the madams, showing off the pretty necklace on her neck to the rest of the women sitting at the table. How envious! I shall make my hubby buy one for me and my daughter here as well, said the woman opposite her, fanning her handkerchief. The group of women laughed to themselves. But even if there was a jovial atmosphere among them, there was a hidden competitiveness within them as well. This wasn't just a place to socialize, this was a place to brag. They wanted to show off how wealthy they were, how much their husbands spent to pamper them, and how much better their lives were compared to others. It was a vicious environment. If one wasn't grossly wealthy, then they didn't deserve to participate in these kinds of gatherings. Just then, the door to the tea party opened, bringing with it the ringing of a bell. Normally, the wealthy madams would have simply given one look at Castell and immediately turned their heads away the moment they saw her maid uniform. However, there was a certain smell in the air that they couldn't simply ignore. Castell walked inside and bowed to the madams, before taking her place among the maids in the next room. The madams and their rich daughters all turned their noses up as they smelled the fragrant scent of flowers in the air. It was strong, but it wasn't imposing like perfume. It was subtle yet made its mark on their noses all the same. Do you smell that? The madam wearing the pearl necklace asked. I smell it too, Auntie. It's really good, said one of the young daughters at the table. Be honest, ladies. Did any of you spray your perfume? The table shook their heads. Just then, Castell walked over to the table with a tray in her hand carrying tea and biscuits. I apologize, madams. The Vanderbilt mistress cannot attend today's meeting because she is currently out of town for the entire month. She has asked me to come in her stead and serve you the best biscuits and tea in our warehouse. Castell didn't notice that everyone at the table was looking at her with intense eyes. The scent intensified the moment she came near them, as if she was a bundle of flowers put together. Even though the madams immediately noticed her aromatic scent, Castell herself thought that nobody noticed the difference. The reason for that was because everyone in the Vanderbilt mansion smelled good. Ever since the young master gave them soap and shampoo, everyone washed themselves with it, no exceptions. That was why Castell's nose was indifferent to her own scent. It was only when the entire table went silent for an entire minute did Castell realize something was different with them. Have I done something wrong? She asked them. Finally, the madam with the pearl necklace asked Castell, What perfume do you use? Castell was a bit flustered with the question. Perfume? I'm sorry, madam, but I don't use perfume. The rest of the women at the table shook their heads. No need to lie. We're all women here. Now, tell us which perfume you bought to make you smell this good. Castell finally understood the situation. "Oh, you must have been smelling my soap," she said with enthusiasm. "That must not be it. Soaps don't smell this good. Are you lying to us?" asked the madam. "No, madam." Castell vehemently shook her head, causing her hair to whip back and forth. And each time, the scent of her shampoo wafted over to the table. One of the daughters on the table immediately stood up and smelled Castell's hair. "Your hair smells so good. And your skin, it's so soft as well." The rest of the women crowded Castell and examined her. Certainly, her entire body was emanating a natural fragrance that simply could not be achieved by any perfume. It was as if her skin and hair themselves were the ones that smelled good. "Ladies, mind your manners." The madam with the pearl necklace stopped the ladies from crowding Castell too much. "Now, are you certain that you achieved this scent through nothing but soap?" she asked. Castell nodded her head obediently. "Yes, madam. I only use soap to clean my body and something called a shampoo to clean my hair after every bath." The rest of the women at the table slowly sat back down in their seats, completely bewildered by the thought of smelling this good with nothing but soap. "Can you tell us the name of this soap and shampoo? Or better yet, will you sell me some of this material? I am willing to buy it at the price of 1 gold. "Me too. I'll buy it for 1 gold too. Reserve 2 for me. I want to buy 1 for my daughter as well." Before sundown, Castell returned to the Vanderbilt mansion and immediately knocked on the young master's door. "Castell? What's wrong?" Once she entered his room, she immediately told him about what happened to her in the tea establishment. "I'm telling you, young master, your product will certainly be devoured by a lot of women if you sell it at the market. Those women are not shy about spending money." Michael was intrigued. If a simple soap and shampoo was enough to make the wealthy women of Kingsbridge clamor to buy it at 1 gold a pop, then it might be a good idea to start selling it at the market. Even though he would inherit the riches of the Vanderbilt family in the future, it wouldn't be a bad idea to get some money for himself. If he continued to rely on the Vanderbilt family money, he would have to ask his mother for money each time he needed to buy his materials. But if he had money for himself, he could keep his projects a secret. Chapter 13. Plans to sell. Michael found out that a gold coin was equal to 1,000 silver coins, and a silver coin was worth 1,000 bronze coins. For some context, it turned out that maids like Castell and Beretta earned about 1 gold coin per month, which was considered to be a very generous salary in this world. Normal people lived only on silver and bronze coins, so even having a single gold coin could be considered very rich. The best part about this was that the ingredients needed to create the soap were only about a few hundred bronze coins. Profit was tremendous. "I see. Thank you for telling me. If I were to sell this to the market, would you be the one to deliver the goods?" Castell immediately perked up at Michael's request. "Of course, young master. It would be my honor. As long as we sell the soap to those madams, then I'm sure its reputation would spread like wildfire." Michael nodded. Castell described those women as the type of people who like to brag about their luxury. Once other people notice that they're using his soap, many people would immediately envy them. In this world, those madams were like the early version of influencers back in his original world. Take with you other maids and buy some more ingredients for the soap. Oh, and buy some more exotic flowers and oils. If he was going to sell them, Michael decided to create different versions of the soap and shampoo. Not everyone liked the floral scent. Castell nodded and walked out of Michael's room with passion burning in her eyes. Now that he was all alone in his room, Michael turned to a single piece of gear in his hands. Using his 2-star spell Metal Bend, the smallest gear he could create was about the size of an adult hand. It was far too big to create the wristwatch and pocket watch that he envisioned. "I guess I'll just have to settle with a big clock for now." ChatJK1, can you explain to me in detail how the early version of a mechanical clock worked? Certainly. Mechanical clocks use the combination of gears and weights to create a consistent movement that is useful in timekeeping. Michael laid in his bed as the information washed over his brain. The mechanical knowledge needed for the creation of a clock was far too complicated for him to learn in a single second. He spent the entire night digesting the information until finally, He understood the concept with the same mastery as an engineer. He was so excited about this project that he almost couldn't sleep. To make himself exhausted, Michael meditated and increased his mana gathering even faster than normal, straining his body till he was tired. All this time, he didn't slack off on growing the mana stones in his body. Right now, the 4 main elemental rocks near his abdomen were the size of a small acorn. He found that the amount of mana those small rocks contained was enough for him to cast 1-star spells continuously for 10 minutes without getting tired. ChatJK1. Can you tell me how my mana compares to other mages? I'm sorry. I have insufficient data to have an accurate comparison. This was one of the downsides of keeping his magic a secret. He didn't have any tutor to tell him about the basics of magic. Since he wasn't supposed to know magic, he wasn't supposed to ask questions about them. This led him to have a very shallow understanding of magic and how it worked. He wanted to know a lot more. He wanted to learn other spells, he wanted to know if there were elements present other than the 4 main ones, and he wanted to know the difference between the star ratings of the spells. I'll have to reveal my magic to my parents at some point. When they return, I'll tell the truth and say that I created the plumbing system using my magic. His goal for doing this was to have an excuse to learn more about magic. Knowing his father, he would immediately order a tutor to teach him everything he needed to know. The next day, Michael started to create the first parts of his clock project. Since the gears needed a lot of precision, he couldn't rush it or else the clock wouldn't work. In the meantime, he tasked some of the maids to help him create the soap and shampoo he was going to sell to the market. Of course, he immediately followed the modern way and created the primitive version of a factory. Some of the maids were in charge of mixing the main ingredients, turning them into a fine powder, while the next set of maids were in charge of mixing those with water. Then, he also created more molds for the soap, where another set of maids slowly poured the mixture to create the perfect rectangle shape. The maids were incredibly enthusiastic about this project since Michael promised them that they could take their own supply of soap and shampoo at the end of the day. And even though Michael said that he would give them some coins as compensation for their work, the maids immediately refused. There's no need, young master. In the first place, we are hired to help you with everything in your life. And we are still incredibly thankful for the plumbing system you gave us. It's changed our lives. It is an honor for us to do this work. Let them do it, young master, Beretta said to Michael. You don't know how thankful the maids are for your inventions. You'd be giving them no chance to show their thanks if you pay them. Michael was incredibly moved by their sacrifice, but he didn't like it. He lived in a world where proper work was compensated. So, if they weren't going to accept coins, Michael would simply shower them with more modern inventions in the future. Chapter 14. Need to relax. The days passed, with the maids and butlers working hard every day. They finished their chores and tasks for the mansion early in the day, and then immediately went to the backyard and continued to produce rows and rows of soap and shampoo. Meanwhile, Michael was busy constructing his clock project. The hardest part was already over, with most of the gears and mechanisms already produced in his project room. He just needed a little bit more adjustments and he'd finally be ready to piece it all together for it to work. After 2 more days, he finally made a very rudimentary version of a Big Ben clock. It was as big as a cabinet made out of wood, with a simple round face at the very center. And even though the hour and minute hands of the clock were just thin rods of metal, it would do its job properly. As long as nobody looks inside, it looks decent, Michael said, consoling himself. Since he wasn't a master craftsman just yet, he could only brute force his way into completing the project. If one looked on the inside, they would see gears and pulley ropes haphazardly jammed inside with no care for elegance at all. But of course, he made sure that all the mechanisms worked as intended. Hopefully. If it works, then it doesn't matter how it looks. The good thing about this clock was that it didn't have any power source. The bad thing was that he needed to wind up the crank every day, which would slowly lower the weight inside and make the clock hands move and act like a proper clock. Michael walked to the side and started to wind up the clock by rotating the crank he installed. Ding! A satisfying sound rang out as Michael felt the resistance in the lever increase, signifying that it was at its limit. This was the moment of truth. Michael let go of the crank and finally, the rhythmic sound echoed in the clock as the hands ticked down every second. It worked! Satisfaction gushed over Michael's face. It was hard to create, but it was worth it. Young master, what is that? Michael didn't know it, but there was already a crowd of maids and butlers gathered behind him. Their eyes burned with an intense curiosity as they looked at the giant cabinet that rang out with a rhythmic tick-tock sound. Listen up, everyone. This is called a clock. It is divided into 12 parts, with each part depicting an hour. Michael went into a very long lecture about how clocks worked, but as expected, it was hard for people who had never seen a clock before to understand it. Heck, even people in his previous world had trouble reading a clock even though they knew it all their lives. If this hand moves to the next line, it is equivalent to how long a candle lasts. Once he equated it to candles, which was how people measured time in this world, they quickly understood the concept. I see, young master. Oh, another invention from the young master. He's too smart. Unfortunately, they didn't know how useful a clock was yet. After all, they didn't have to keep careful watch of their time during their daily life. That was about to change. So, I hereby enforce all of you to only work 8 hours a day, and not a second more. His words were immediately met with confusion. They didn't understand why he would impose such strict rules when doing more work would result in more soaps created, which would lead to a better profit. Michael could have asked them to work all night long to create the soaps, and they would have done so without question. They were under his family's employ after all. But now, Michael wanted them to work barely half a day. Young master, why? The maids asked. Are you planning on letting go of us? They were so used to working long hours and working every second of every day that they thought it was normal. But in Michael's world, everyone found out that working too much led to disastrous consequences. People must have a healthy balance of work and life to truly live the way a human was supposed to live. They were not slaves, after all. Although Michael could have treated them that way and earned a lot of money in the process, he was not going to be one of those people. As for why, well, Michael had one simple reason. If I were put in your place, I wouldn't want to work all day long. That's it. Michael said those words with the same innocence as a child. It endeared him to their hearts all the more for it. The workers of the Vanderbilt mansion felt a warm sensation wash over their chests. How could they have been so lucky as to serve the only young master to treat them not as just maids and butlers, but also humans? Some of them wiped the tears from their eyes and chuckled. Hee hee, young master. We hope you stay with that kind of thinking even in the future. This makes me want to work even harder. Yeah, let's create more soaps and keep the young master as wealthy as possible. I'll have to do it all night if I have to. The maids and butlers cheered and immediately went over to their stations to create more soaps. Michael shook his head in disappointment. They completely missed his point. Perhaps the reason they want to keep working is that they have nothing better to do. Maybe I should give them something to look forward to after a long, hard day's work. He sat on his bed and kept on cycling through his ideas. There were a lot of pastimes in his previous life, but some of them required advanced technology. If I were them, what would I want to do? Then the idea hit him. He almost couldn't believe that he hadn't thought about it till now. What were the usual pastimes and relaxation spots he usually saw in anime and television? Hot springs. Chapter 15. Hot springs completed. The next day, Michael started to work on his hot springs idea. It didn't need to be extremely complicated. He just needed a big pool and a compartment on the bottom for the wood and fire that would heat the water to a comfortable temperature. It was unfortunate that they weren't anywhere near a volcano, which would have been an easy way to get water for the hot springs. But they could still make do with a man-made one. He asked ChatJK1 for an appropriate space near the house to install the hot springs, and his AI assistant gave him a flat place near the river. He decided to follow the Romans for the design of his hot springs. They used hot air and smoke to heat the flooring and water of their caldaria, or their bathhouses. He started by creating a foundation at the bottom, filled with tiny pillars where the smoke and fire would spread. Over those pillars would be the actual flooring of the bathhouse. He used the 2-star spell Boulder Carve to turn large chunks of rock on the ground into the needed pillars and flooring for the actual bathhouse. Boulder Carve. Earth element. This magic allows the user to chip and carve out pieces of stone from a large boulder. He used that with the combination of the very useful 1-star spell, Stone Mend, which allowed the stones to seamlessly connect without the use of cement. Stone Mend. Earth element. This magic allows the user to combine similar earth materials into one piece as if they were connected from the start. Since it was such a large undertaking, Michael couldn't hide his magic powers anymore. The maids witnessed as reality started to shift and bend beginning from Michael's hands and slowly manifested into a glowing green aura around his body. They gasped, unable to believe that a 5-year-old boy was able to lift a boulder larger than a bear with only his magic. The young master, he's casting magic. I shouldn't be surprised, but he's really using earth magic. That's no easy spell, either. That's a 2-star difficulty magic. Some of the clueless maids tilted their heads. Is it really surprising for the young master to be good at magic? Most geniuses learn magic at the age of 5 as well. The more knowledgeable butlers looked at the young maid. Yes, in terms of geniuses, then it isn't that surprising. But the young master's different. How? She asked. Have you ever seen a magic tutor come to this mansion? Have you ever seen the madam teach the young master about earth magic? Once the elderly butler pointed it out, a lot of the younger maids finally realized how much of a monstrous genius Michael was. All the spells he was casting right now were self-learned. Nobody taught him anything. This meant that Michael picked up those spells either through observation or intuition, both of which were a feat only the talented and monstrous geniuses in history were capable of. Also, how long have we been watching him cast those spells? Almost an hour? Yet he's barely broken a sweat. How big is his mana capacity? Sir and Madam got really lucky with their only son. Not only is he a genius craftsman in the making, but he also has the potential to be a wizard as well. Madam will be ecstatic once she learns about this. Her son is a genius at earth magic. It wouldn't be for a while later when they finally learned that Michael was not only proficient with earth magic, but also with the other 3 main elemental mana as well. But that's a story for another time. After a couple more days, the open bathhouse was finally completed. It was quite a big pool if Michael compared it to the bathhouses of his previous life. But in terms of his current mansion, it was just like a small puddle. He separated the pool into 2 sections. One for men and one for women. At the end of the workday, Michael gathered all the maids and butlers at the entrance of his hot springs. Even when they were outside, they could feel the heat coming off the entrance. Young master, what did you create this time? Beretta asked. Michael took a bundle of firewood and chucked it towards the opening to the basement of the bathhouse, letting the fire get hotter. This is a hot spring. After working hard all day, you can spend the rest of the day relaxing and immersing yourself in hot water. Trust me, it's invigorating. The prospect of bathing in hot water after working all day long seemed like the perfect idea to relax. This looks amazing. I can't wait. You've truly outdone yourself this time, young master. My face is getting younger from the steam alone. Everyone walked into the bathhouse with curious and excited looks on their faces. Michael directed the butlers to the right side, while the maids were led to the left side. You take off your clothes here, and then you can take a towel and rinse yourselves. Once he told them what to do, the maids and butlers immediately rushed toward the hot springs. And just as Michael was about to go to the men's bath, some of the maids pulled him back. Young master, where are you going? Going to take a bath? The young maid shook her head. With those burly men? No, young master. You'll come with us. Michael looked at the smiling young maids and felt his cheeks redden. He forgot. He was 5 years old, which meant that people were treating him as nothing more than a precious, innocent child. Come bath with us. We'll wash your back. Michael started to back away. No thanks. Most of the maids were young and only about 20 years old. Compared to his age when he died in his previous world, they were the ones to be considered as babies. Oh please, young master. We've bathed you when you were a wee little child before. Don't be shy. The group of clueless maids dragged Michael to the women's bath. It's fine. This is fine, right? I'm only 5 years old. I just won't look so it's okay. Right, Chat JK1? Oh. Chapter 16. Reborn Soap and Shampoo. The sounds of excited giggling and splashing echoed through the hot springs. It sounded like the maids were having a lot of fun relaxing and joshing around in the rejuvenating hot water. Michael wouldn't know, of course. He remained on the sidelines of the pool, with his eyes covered by his hands. "Young master, come join us," they teased. But the adorable young master simply shook his head. From their perspective, he just looked like an embarrassed kid. The young master is so cute. Michael used all his willpower to suppress his inner manly desires. But the maids weren't making it easy. "My skin is so smooth now. Look. Touch me. Kia, don't touch me there. I never knew you were so blessed with those huge." "Shush. You're one to talk. I can't believe you're able to sit with that large behind." A few hours later, everyone was out of the hot springs wearing a robe around their bodies. They had an otherworldly expression on their face, as if they had just experienced nirvana. They had never felt so relaxed and clean in their life. "Young master, the milk you've requested is here," a butler said as he got out of the carriage carrying a big barrel of milk. Of course, one of the essential things to do after relaxing in the hot springs was to drink milk. Drinking this would help replenish all the lost sweat they shed due to the hot temperatures of the bath. He even showed them the proper stance. One hand gulping down milk, and the other posted on their waist. "Oh, it's so good, I might melt. So this is what relaxing feels like." There was nothing but praise for the hot springs. These maids and butlers started work even when they were a child, which meant that they had never experienced something like this before. It was as if they became 10 years younger, with their cheeks smooth and reddish. Michael felt satisfied. He sat on his chair and watched them talk and enjoy the night under the stars. He taught them how comfortable life could be. He didn't want to stop. He hoped that he could show it to this world as well. The next morning, the clock bell rang, signaling the start of the new day. The maids and butlers woke up early and got to work. All the relaxing yesterday re-energized their bodies to the fullest, allowing them to work with 200% efficiency. They pumped up water to refill the tank, they cleaned the mansion, they changed the sheets, and they tended to the garden in record time. The bell for noon hadn't even rang yet, but every chore in the mansion was already done. They immediately went to work on the soaps, taking the dried molds out of the sun and into the mansion for safekeeping. By helping the young master with the soap and shampoo, they were hoping that they could repay all the good he'd given them. Finally, after a few days of work, Michael finally had a good stock of soaps and shampoo with different variations each. The mansion was filled with crates carrying stacks and stacks of soap, and on top of those were vials of soap by the hundreds. "I'll be delivering the product to the madams," said Castell. There were already some pre-orders from the madams who witnessed firsthand how soap and shampoo could be even more fragrant than some perfume. Those few people already ordered about a box worth of soap and shampoo for themselves, and not only that, because of the word-of-mouth gossip, there were some madams who personally approached Castell to buy one for themselves. "That's great," said Michael. The butlers loaded the crates onto the carriage to be delivered personally by Castell. But before she left to go to the next town, she turned back to Michael to ask him an important question. "Young master, if they ask me where I got this from, what shall I tell them?" The maids and butlers kept a careful silence about the young master and his inventions. When they wrote to his parents, they even lied to them and said that nothing eventful happened in the mansion during their trip. This was a crime worthy of termination, but for the young master, it was worth it. If I want to keep this business a secret from my parents, then I need to go under a different name, or better yet, why not a company? Tell them that you got them from a company called Reborn. Castell took Michael's words and nodded to herself. Reborn, Reborn soap, Reborn shampoo. That is a very good name for a company, young master. After all, ladies would feel like they were reborn once they tried your product. Ah, yeah. She didn't know that Atlan only thought about that name because he was literally reborn from another world. Castell personally traveled through the town and delivered the boxes of soap and shampoo to the mansions of their very first customers. The madams and daughters excitedly opened their boxes of goodies and smelled it for themselves. And just as it was promised, it smelled as amazing as Castell said it would be. They didn't even waste any more time and ordered their own maids to prepare a bath for them. They wanted to try out the soap and shampoo at this instant. Apologies. The madam had been waiting for these soaps and shampoo for quite a while now that she's been moody lately. This is the promised compensation, and a couple more for your troubles. The madam's butler handed Castell a purse, hefty with gold coins. Just from weight alone, she knew that it was far more than what she expected. And just when she was about to leave, the butler waved down her carriage. Ahem. If we were to acquire more of these goods, can we count on you to deliver them? Castell couldn't help but smile. Yes, please. Oh, can we know the name of the man I have to thank for making my madam happy? Even though Castell wanted to brag about her young master, she kept her quiet. This is brought to you by a company called Reborn. Unfortunately, that is all I can say. Reborn very well. Castell finished her deliveries for the night, and the reactions from their customers were as ecstatic as the first madam. A day later, their husbands immediately noticed the difference, earning the madams a lot of love and attention just from their smell alone. Not only that, as they paraded themselves throughout the town, all the other ladies got envious of how their skin and hair were so smooth and fragrant. Of course, as those madams started bragging, the name Reborn soap and Reborn shampoo imprinted in the minds of the rich people in Kingsbridge as the must-buy premier soap and shampoo brand in the market. Chapter 17 1,000 gold. Since the price of a pair of soap and shampoo was 1 gold coin, and the costs of all the ingredients to create those pair of items only cost around 500 bronze coins, the profit he got from selling a pair of them was around 999,500 bronze coins. It was insane to think about. That was the profit from just a pair of soap and shampoo. All the crates Castell delivered each contained about 100 pairs. This meant that each box gave about 100 gold coins. In total, Michael was now looking at 1,000 gold coins all spread around in his bedroom. Hey ChatJK1, if you were to convert all these gold coins into the US dollar, how much would it be? The value of the gold coins in your possession varies greatly due to the difference in purity, as well as the condition of each coin. Since you have 1,000 gold coins, each with a different purity, the money in your possession is roughly worth around 10,000 US dollars. Michael took a deep breath. That kind of money was considered very rich in third-world countries. And since it took about a week to create all the soap and shampoo they sold yesterday, that would mean that Michael could earn about 40,000 US dollars worth of gold coins every month. And if he did it for a year, that would net him just shy of $500,000. Back in his previous world, a monthly salary of $10,000 would have been enough to live relatively comfortably. But if he earned $40,000 a month, he would join the elite class of the top 1% of people in first-world countries like America. Earning this much felt like cheating. All the work was being done by the maids and the butlers, while he just stayed around the mansion without doing anything. I guess I'll store this money for now. Michael wasn't short on funds for now. If he wanted to buy something he didn't want his parents to know, then he could be assured that he could buy it for himself. A few more days passed and Castella came running into Michael's door with the biggest smile on her face. Young master! Young master! Michael opened the door and rubbed his eyes. The morning bell from the clock hadn't even rung yet, but Castell looked like she had been up for hours already. What is it? The soap and shampoo is becoming very popular, young master. All the gossip I've heard from the other maids in town is all about the Reborn soap and shampoo. That's good, Michael said as he yawned and stretched his body. It was probably because he was born into the richest family in the world, but Michael wasn't really that excited about the prospect of earning more money. Having 1,000 gold coins seemed sufficient enough. After all, the things he wanted to buy hadn't been invented yet. He was the one who had to create them, so he didn't want to buy anything from the markets in this world. Wait, why am I thinking that this world is just a medieval world? I completely forgot. This is a world of magic too. I have something I want. Can you buy it for me in secret? Michael whispered. Castell picked up on Michael's clues and entered his bedroom for a private conversation. Is there anything specific you want, young master? Michael nodded. First of all, I can trust you, right? Castell nodded and bumped her first on her chest. Of course, young master, she said, a little bit offended that he didn't think she was completely loyal to him at this point. He cleared his throat and summoned the fire from the tip of his finger. This was one of the very first spells he learned, the one-star ember. I can use magic, he said. Fire. Young master, you are adept with the fire element as well. Castella was not surprised that Michael could use magic. She was surprised that he could cast a spell other than the earth element. Is there something wrong with that? He asked, completely oblivious. Young master, having mastery of dual elements is considered to be very rare. Michael looked at Castell, trying to see if she was serious. He thought it wasn't anything special. After all, a fire spell wasn't the only thing he could use. He raised his hand and summoned fire on the tip of his finger, a small rock on the other, and a blob of water on the next. Then a gust of wind rotated the three elements into constant movement around his hand, with enough mastery to weave them around his fingers. Castell nearly tumbled backward once she saw this. For elements. That's supposed to be impossible, young master. I can't even call you a genius anymore. So, this is not normal? Of course, it's not, Castell screamed. Ha! Michael learned to be a little more careful with showing his quadruple mastery over the elements. I think it's best if you only show your mastery over the earth element for now, young master. At least that can be explained by you inheriting your mother's talent. Castell made a very good suggestion. A few minutes later, Castell finally calmed down after Michael fetched her a cup of water. That was a shock, young master. Sorry about that. She took a gulp and turned to him. By the way, what was it that you wanted me to buy? Michael gave her the pouch containing 1,000 gold coins. I want you to buy any book that describes magic, mana, and spells. Specifically, I want things that can teach me how to cast other spells. Castell took another big gulp of water. Books? Do you mean magic scrolls, young master? What is that? A magic scroll is something that mages use to learn different spells. Most of them can be bought in the local wizard tower. Chapter 18, Introducing Chess. Magic towers, you say? Tell me more. A magic tower is a tall spire where all veteran mages and aspiring wizards gather. The upper floors are restricted for locals, but they have their first floor open for business. There, they sell books and scrolls, and one could even employ a mage through them. Michael was incredibly interested in the magic tower. He imagined it to be like the fantasy books he read, with moving paintings, floating floors, and secret chambers. Have you been there before? He asked Castell. Once. When I was young, I was fortunate enough to chance upon one of the mages showing his magic spells to the public. It was breathtaking. I would have wanted to become a mage if I had the aptitude, Castell reminisced. Michael suddenly looked up at Castell. The mages showed off his spells? Is that a normal occurrence? Castell nodded. Not too often though, mostly on special occasions. The Guild of Arcana performs so that the local people are reassured that they are safe under their banner. Oh, the Guild of Arcana is the organization in charge of the Magic Tower. Castell went on to talk more about the Magic Tower, but Michael was barely listening. He was too enchanted by the fact that he could potentially witness a veteran mage perform one of his spells in person. After all, his ChatJK-1 could analyze its theory and allow him to cast it himself. It was a very promising prospect, one that tempted Michael to get out of the mansion for the first time and visit the Magic Tower. Kingsbridge Town was only about 2 to 3 hours by carriage away from here, so it wasn't that far. Young master, are you listening? Michael trusted his ChatJK-1 to listen to him. He didn't have to pay attention. Can you summarize what she said? The Magic Tower is managed by the Guild of Arcana. They are a nationwide organization in charge of keeping the peace among mages and the people. He simply reiterated ChatJK-1's answer and impressed Castell with his listening skills. Do you think I can go to the Magic Tower? Castell was taken aback and immediately shook her head. I'm sorry, young master. For a person of your stature, it would cause far too much fanfare. Your mother and father will immediately be notified once you leave the estate. They would immediately return home and fire us all for letting that happen. Michael kept forgetting that he was the youngest son of the Vanderbilt name, the richest family in the entire world. Even in his previous world, the children of celebrities would immediately be crowded by paparazzis. This world looked to be no different. Fine. There's no rush, he said. That is the best course of action, young master. There's no doubt that your mother and father would want you to visit the magic tower once they find out about your magic aptitude anyway. Michael nodded to himself. It would be advantageous to come to the magic tower with his parents. The mages would surely want to curry favor with them, which Michael would take advantage of by making them perform spells in front of him. They would see it as nothing more than a child getting curious, but Michael would secretly learn their spells. Another day passed, and Michael was starting to get bored. Ever since Castell told him about the magic tower, he couldn't keep his mind off it. My mind is too active. Is there something I can do to keep me mentally active? Just then, Michael remembered something. Before he died in his previous life, he was addicted to an online game he played on his computer. This game became quite popular during that time, even though it had existed for more than 1,000 years before the modern age. It wasn't a role-playing game, it wasn't a multiplayer game, it was much more simple than that. It was online chess. Since he spent every day in the confines of his own home, he couldn't really play the board game version of chess. But now he had the chance to. Michael didn't waste time and got out of his bed. He rushed past the busy maids washing dishes and gave them a curt greeting. Then he walked into the forest to find a big tree with a thick stump. Using the 1-star spell Splinter Wood, he chopped down the tree one slice at a time. After a while, he looked at the fallen tree and envisioned a perfect 8x8 grid, perfect for a chessboard. A couple of hours later, Michael emerged from the forest carrying a thin rectangle board and a couple of wooden statues in a small bag. The clock bell had already rung, meaning everyone's work was already done, and it was time for relaxation. Most maids immediately went into the hot springs, but some butlers got too tired of bathing in hot water every day. They spent their relaxation doing nothing but lounging on their chairs. Thump! The butlers were jolted awake as Michael plopped down the chessboard onto the table. "Young master, you're here." They greeted him. Michael sat opposite the board and looked at the butlers with a mischievous grin on his face. "Let's play a game," Michael said in a weird voice, as he arranged the chess pieces onto the board. "What is that?" they all asked simultaneously. "This is chess, an intellectual game for distinguished gentlemen. If any one of you can beat me, then I will give you 100 gold coins." The butlers perked up upon hearing the juicy sound of a bag of coins being put on the table. "Is that real, young master?" one of the butlers asked. "Only if you beat me, of course." The veteran butler with white hair and mustache pushed the younger ones away and faced the young master. "Ho ho ho. I am nothing but an intellectual and distinguished gentleman, young master." Michael smiled. "I knew you'd find this interesting, Sebastian. Good. This game is called chess, and here are the rules." The butlers listened intently, with their faces slowly furrowing as they heard how simple the game looked. Just capture the king? It was easy, they thought. Chapter 19, Chess Craze. The hours passed, and the maids finally returned from their relaxation at the hot springs. But as soon as they walked out, they were welcomed with the sight of all the butlers huddled over a single table. Not only that, they were quite noisy too. No, the best move would be to move the horse there. Ah, but he'll be captured by the bishop at that point. You're all missing the point. The young master is just one move away from cornering the king. Michael picked up the crude version of the queen piece to capture his opponent's pawn, cornering the king and giving it no options left other than to surrender. "Checkmate," Michael said, with a proud smile on his face. Sebastian didn't have the cool and dignified aura he always had. The man's white hair was in disarray as he kept on rubbing his head every time Michael attacked him with his versatile queen piece. Even his signature mustache looked like it had lost all its wax and ended up sagging to his neck. I surrender, young master. The rest of the butlers applauded at the young master's convincing win. Sebastian was thoroughly beaten through 20 games, dispelling the thought that this chess game was as easy as they thought. Even though they were all proud of their intellect because of their training as butlers, they couldn't seem to compare to the young master himself. At the end, the rest of the butlers were convening with Sebastian about the next smartest move. But even with their combined help, they couldn't capture the queen that decimated their pieces. Don't feel bad. I had a head start against you after all. Michael peaked at around 1500 in online chess, which was considered quite good for an amateur. He didn't even have to use ChatJK1 to figure out the moves to defeat Sebastian. There were a lot of errors with your endgame positioning. Would you like me to point out your mistakes and give you the best moves to do in those situations? Not right now. These guys are way too weak to be my opponent right now. Maybe I'll need your help once they get better. Probably in 100 years, ha ha ha. I have estimated that Sebastian will be able to beat you in chess within 2 years. He has shown great talent in it. What? Michael's pride was a little bit wounded when he heard that. After all, he spent more than 5 years playing online chess consistently before he got to the rating he was right now. Young master, just one more game, Sebastian begged. Oh, look at that. The bell's ringing. Guess I got to go to bed. See ya, Michael said, moving his ears to the non-existent sound in the air. The butlers continued to play amongst themselves until the night came. But even as Sebastian closed his eyes and tried to sleep, he couldn't help but see the chessboard in his dreams, with the young master opposite him. But even in his sleep, he couldn't beat the young master. The next day, Michael created more chessboards and pieces to satisfy the cravings of the butlers. As soon as the bell rang and their workday ended, they quickly went over to the tables and played chess amongst each other. It was as if a frenzy appeared in the mansion, infecting all the intellectuals who wanted to test their mettle against others. Sebastian proved himself to be a head above the others, as now he was the one who went undefeated against all the other butlers. But as they kept playing and playing, the skill level among the butlers got higher and higher. The good camaraderie among them allowed them to learn from each other, with the winner teaching the loser about how to get better. It wasn't just them that got addicted, but some of the maids also got acquainted in the game. Castell was one such person, and she quickly fell in love with the game and the complexity within the moves. The mansion was now filled with sounds of pieces hitting the board, as well as the occasional yelps as they got their pieces taken because of a mistake. More days passed and finally, it was time for another shipment of soaps and shampoo to their new customers. After the rich madams and their daughters showed off their new smell to their friends, it immediately sparked an intense desire to get one for themselves. But because the Reborn soap and shampoo wasn't available to the market yet, it became some sort of a local legend within the community of wives and madams. This, in turn, pushed demand through the roof. Castell was already contacted by the madams that their friends want to buy loads and loads of their product. Thankfully, Michael was able to foresee this and upped the scale of production on the soap and shampoo. Now, Castell was on her way to deliver the crates of soap and shampoo to those new eager customers. "Oh my! I can even smell it from here," said a wealthy woman as Castell dragged the crate right to her doorstep. "Of course," replied Castell with a smile. "That is why Reborn soap and shampoo is so popular right now. Well, I consider myself very fortunate that I was one of the few that can buy this item." Castell smiled. "Would you like to go in for tea?" asked the madam, clearly trying to curry favor with Castell. "Oh, I wouldn't want to impose, madam. Please, it's no big deal. And there's still so much we have to talk about. Some of my friends have been wanting to buy a box for themselves as well. Maybe you can help them." Castell, smelling the scent of gold, finally acquiesced and went in for a tea with the madam. The two of them sipped chamomile and ate biscuits near the garden. "Oh, a guest. That's perhaps the most interesting thing that happened today," said a well-dressed man lounging in his chair. "Please forgive my husband. He's been too bored lately," said the madam. But then Castell had an idea. She looked at the madam's husband and said, "Bored, sir? Perhaps I might interest you in a little game called chess. Chapter 20. Distinguished Gentleman. And that would be checkmate, sir, Castell said as she cornered the man's king with her bishop. The man, instead of being angry that he lost the game, became incredibly excited. This is exhilarating. There are so many possibilities in the moves that I can't help but try to think about moves 5 turns ahead. Castell laughed. She was like him when she first learned about chess. This game called chess? Can I buy one for myself? I simply must tell my friends about this. They are going to have a blast. This was an unexpected turn of events. She only brought her own chessboard because she was bored whenever they traveled through the carriage. She would play by herself and try to improve her skill through imagination. When the sir mentioned he was bored, she simply wanted to play a game of chess with him because she wanted to play it as well. She would have never thought that it would lead to another possible source of income for the Reborn company. Very well, sir. I will ask my employer to provide you with chessboards. Later in the evening, Castell reported the incident to Michael. Sure, why not? Very well, sir. How much should we sell a board set? 1 gold coin each? No, that's too low. How about 10 gold coins each? Castell considered chess as an expensive item because Michael constructed each piece himself, requiring a lot of effort and time from the young master himself. The maids and butlers couldn't do it because they didn't have the magic nor craftsmanship to create the intricate statuettes for the chess pieces. In her opinion, a single board should cost around 100 gold coins. No, that's too expensive. We should sell it for around 100 bronze coins, Michael said, rubbing his chin. Bronze coins? Not gold coins, young master? Isn't that too low? Michael shook his head. What do you think will happen once we put the chessboard into the market and it costs around 1 gold coin? People would want to buy it? Castell answered. Michael nodded. Yes, but what if they can't afford it? What do you think would happen after that? Castell was stumped. They would want to save money for it? No. What would happen is that other people will produce their own chessboards at a much lower price. They will sell it and earn much more than us because there are a lot of people who would buy it. That kind of practice was very normal in his previous world. If a popular brand released a new product, there would immediately be a lot of fake products swarming the market and being sold at a much lower price. There's nothing special about a chessboard. It's just made of wood and a couple of pieces. Anyone can make that, Michael said. It was only then that Castell realized Michael's words. No one would want to buy a chessboard from them at an extremely high price when they could just make one themselves. I think I get it, young master. If we sell it at a low price, a lot of people would still be able to afford them and buy them from us instead of other people. Michael was also thinking about one thing that this world didn't have: branding. Sometimes it was much better to improve branding rather than earning money. That was what increased the profits of companies in his previous world into global heights. How much did we earn from the Reborn soap and shampoo delivery today? Michael asked. Castell gave him an even bigger leather pouch than the one last time. About 3,500 gold coins, young master. Michael held about $35,000 worth of gold coins in his hands. This was the most amount of money he had in his previous life. And to think he earned this in about a week. Michael was blown away. But since he didn't have anything to do with this money, it was better to invest it in his company instead. Take this money and hire some wood craftsmen or mages to create the chessboards and pieces, Michael said as he pushed the leather pouch back to Castell's hands. Understood, young master. And before she left his room, Michael had one last thing to say. Oh, and introduce the game as Reborn Chess. We need them to know it's ours. The next day, Castell once again set off into Kingsbridge, but this time, it was to deliver chessboards to the Sir's mansion. She arrived at his estate, which was already full of gentlemen acquaintances he invited. Michael created 10 chessboards for this shipment, but the next orders would be made by other craftsmen. Oh, here she is, gentlemen. She is the one who introduced me to this sophisticated game. Castell was met with a lot of curious gazes from the men clad in gentlemen's suits. Judging from their stature alone, she could guess that they were the intellectual type of people. Greetings, sirs and madams. I am here to deliver the chessboards you have ordered, she said as she laid down the board to the table. What say you we play one game to show them the rules? The sir said. It would be my pleasure, Castell replied. After about an hour, the table was crowded with gentlemen rubbing their chins and adjusting their monocles. They were intensely focused on the game, mumbling to themselves about which move they would have made if they were in the man's place. And once again, that is checkmate, sir. The rest of the spectators gasped, only now noticing that Castell's one move completely conquered the chessboard. There was no move left for the king to run away to. Golly! Oh my! The losing man looked very happy despite being bested by Castell yet again. Do you see, gentlemen? This game is the perfect mental battle for men like us. It is as if we are generals barking orders to our army. The rest of the men went silent. It was only a few seconds later when one man with a monocle broke the ice. You shouldn't have moved your king to that place. You should have used your bishop to defend that last pawn, he said, lecturing the man. His words seemed to ignite a lively discussion amongst the gentlemen. You are completely wrong. The best move have been. No. Clearly he should have castled much earlier. Look at you saying the wrong things. What he should have done is, actually, let me show you. Why don't we play a game right now? You can't. I'll be using the board next. Let's play a game to see who'll use it next. You're on.